Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. I'm Gino Buccola alongside Ashley Mailloux, and we're getting set for a Pick 5 strategy video. It is a big weekend, Ashley, as we are on the road to the Derby. Bobby, that's your cue for the road to the Derby package graphic. Let's flash that thing up there as we've got a big road now, and we've got a promotion, really cool, at DRF.com, where we're offering past performances for all of these big events, Ashley, which will include Jeff Ruby Stakes Day this weekend at Turfway, Louisiana Derby Day at Fairgrounds. Then next weekend, believe it's Oaklawn Park and Gulfstream. They have their big days. The weekend after, Keeneland joins the party along with Santa Anita and Aqueduct. We give you all of those days for past performances. Clocker reports for Gulfstream and Santa Anita. Clocker reports for the Oaks, for the Derby. I mean, you get everything you need between now and Kentucky Derby Day all in one package, and you save a ton of money.
Yeah, great deal to take advantage of here. You mentioned saving 37%, and this is where things start to really heat up. The next couple of weeks are crucial, both on the Oak side of things, but also on the Derby. And especially this weekend, I feel like this is where I can say, Gino, I'm finally getting super excited. I feel like the Derby is getting closer and closer, and now starting to sort of figure out who my Derby horses could be and if that'll change in the next 2-3 weeks.
Yep. So for the purpose of this video, Ashley and I will be going through Turfway Park races 8 through 12. They have an all stakes pick 5 on Saturday that will end with the Jeff Ruby Stakes. It used to be the Jeff Ruby Stakes. Now we're just going, I think, Jeff Ruby Stakes, which is very fun. We have Kentucky Derby points, Kentucky Oaks points on the line. Ashley and I won't give you an exact ticket because think about it. Everybody plays different size tickets, right? Everybody has a different bankroll. What we will do is give you the horses that we find as the keys to each race, the horses that we will probably be using, and then others that we might be using defensively on some tickets. If, our keys hit, we could still be alive in some way, shape, or form. Thought a really tricky sequence, Ashley, and it's going to be all synthetic, as is the case over at Turfway Park. So we can head on out, take a look at race number 8. One thing I've noticed in just looking at the video right here, when I spend 4 or 5 days in the casino in Las Vegas, I look like Casper the Friendly Ghost. I need to get out and get some color, especially for an Italian guy. Very, very pale looking right now, Ashley, for me. But that's another conversation for my stylist and for the folks helping me out. Let's get to this week. Let's get to race number 8 and the Rushaway at Turfway Park on Saturday. So we have 3-year-olds here. These are the horses that maybe were just a cut below getting into the Jeff Ruby Stakes. Maybe they didn't want to go quite that far. Maybe they're not quite that good. I mean, for example, Banks, not like he ran poorly in the John Battaglia Memorial. He was 4th. He probably just lost to 3 horses who were better than him that day. California Burrito, Baby Max, Maximum Promise. They're all back in the feature, in the stakes, the graded stakes race. So Banks showing up in this spot seemed super logical for him. I mean, I thought this was one of the more competitive races in the entire sequence because I really think the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are all horses you can make a case for in here. And you could probably make a long shot or 2 case for some of the horses to the outside.
Yeah, and you're talking about the horses, the 5 to the inside. I mean, they're ranging from 5-2 to 5-1 on the morning line. So it sort of speaks to the competitive nature of this event. And looking at the entire card, in terms of the way they're drawn, this is one of the shortest fields. 8 runners in this one. They have 8 runners in the next. I mean, it's tough because I think you bring up a great point. From a strategy standpoint, I think races like this, you probably want to try to get skinny, knowing that you have bigger fields ahead, but a very competitive group. Yeah. And for me, Gino, when we sort of look at the key use defend angle here, I decided to go skinny. I know there are cases to be made, but I felt like I needed to take a hard stance, knowing that later there are other horses that I find, or races, I should say, a little bit more intriguing in terms of spreading. So for me, the key horse I think is going to offer value is the inside horse, the one End of Romance here for Graham Motion. Obviously, Graham and his staff, they know what they're doing with the imports, wherever they come from. Now, Europe's a little bit more familiar, but even in recent times, South African runners, just been able to have these horses ready to fire. Obviously has done nothing wrong. This is going to be a test for class, though, see how this horse is able to fare, but does have experience over a synthetic surface. I like the workouts. They've tried different things, right? Went down to Palm Meadows, went to Fair Hill and try to get a little bit of a different training mechanism going for this one. Johnny V's booked to ride. So at 4-1 on the morning line, I think this one's going to offer value. But for me, the used horse, I think the horse to beat's the 2 Urban Planner. When you look at Irving Mancada and what he's been able to do at Turfway Park, and then aboard this gelding, those last 2 different trips. This horse, if they're going slow, can be forward. He can actually then rate from off of it when the fractions are a little bit more tested. And I think looking at that, that sets this horse up for another performance. Winning 3 in a row is not easy, but to me, he's a must use in here.
Yeah, I thought the one, Ashley, in agreement with you, was probably the horse with the highest upside, the highest ceiling of any in here. You could go back and watch End of Romance's race. This horse was traveling really well, was sixth, made this big rally, just kind of crossed over really easily, and then was wrapped up, like visually extremely impressive from End of Romance. I thought there were a couple of maybe intriguing horses to use. If we go to my grid, and we can take a look at for race number 8, some of the horses who I have in the key spot. I thought the 5 also a little bit interesting. What I like is the progression shown with Cole Moon. You know, you look throughout the form, lost to Baby Max. I think you can go back and probably eliminate that race. One of the races on the grass, this horse had legitimate trouble. All of a sudden, you eliminate those 2 races. The rest of the form looks pretty good. And I think, you know, needed the race on January 24th. It wasn't a bad effort when finishing second that day. Came right back off of that and won most recently. So I thought Cole Moon was interesting. I thought Megalodon had a big effort up at Woodbine. And then the Beyer speed figure wasn't quite as fast when he was able to win and break his maiden at Turfway. But visually, I thought the type of horse that should have no problem getting a little more distance. So I have the 1, 5, and 7 in my top tier. Then Ashley, I just have the logicals underneath, the horses we were talking about toward the inside, the 2 Urban Planner, the 3 Game Warrior, who I will mention in a moment because Game Warrior actually trained with the horse in the coming up in the next race that we're going to talk about. Game Warrior was really impressive in that work in the morning. So I think a horse at least feeling pretty good right now. Then I mentioned Bank. So pretty logical in the use spot. I got a price or 2 in the, in the key spot. Maybe we can get a little bit of value there. But both of us, if you want to take one thing out of this race, both of us have the 1 as a key horse and a horse that we think is going to run really well in this spot.
Yeah, and I will say the 7 was one of those horses that I thought about. I didn't know what to do with. I agree with you. I think looking at those last 2 efforts, whether it was at Woodbine or Turfway Park, a lot to take notice of, especially the connections doing really well with the runners at Turfway Park and spotting them, but decided to kind of toss that one. But I like what you're doing there, using that one as a key.
As we move to race number 9, it's the Animal Kingdom. We'd love to hear from some of you out there. If you are putting together a grid like this, or maybe in one of these races, you agree with Ashley, you like a horse that she's using. If you agree in one of the races with me, probably less likely that you're going to agree with me in a video that I'm doing with Ashley. No doubt about that. But we'd love to hear from you. Do you have a grid? Do you use some sort of a method? And just let us know how you're playing this sequence as we move to the Animal Kingdom 6 furlongs. Ashley, this is the one I was just kind of teasing a little bit when I was pointing out race number 8, because I like Kale's Angel in this race. I think he's a very, very solid sprinter. You go through his form overall, it's been excellent. He's going to make his first start on the synthetic, so that's always a question mark. The one thing in liking him, I am a little concerned because if you watch the workout, which is now on, used to be XBTV, I think it's First Now Live, where they have the workouts they will show you. Kale's Angel got absolutely dusted by Game Warrior when they worked out. I mean, it was like Game Warrior was putting him away and drawing off, almost like a concerning one, especially if you were to like this horse at 2-1, which I kind of do. But again, I kind of hem and haw with myself because that was a synthetic at Santa Anita. This is a synthetic at Turfway, maybe different surfaces. Sometimes work in the morning isn't necessarily what's going to happen in the afternoon, but I think with a short price horse, I at least like to see a lot of positives going in. Kale's Angel, to me, one of the horses to beat, Ashley, coming in hot, also getting the cut back to a sprint, sort of felt like they were the top tier in here.
I feel like you're going to team me up perfectly for the Keys defend, because I love Kale's Angel. I think this horse is really talented, but in terms of where to use this horse, this is a use. It's not a defend, it's a use, but wouldn't be in my top couple in here. And for me, the 2 that are most intriguing are the 1 Picant and then the 4 as well in here. You mentioned coming in hot, cutting back in distance. I think that's key. The Turfway preview and the prior effort, this horse is fast, but doesn't need to be that fast. Can be sort of stalking and sitting in the right trip. And the way that he won, especially that race 3 back, I just thought visually very impressive. And then Picant's obviously the better value, 6-1 on the morning line. I thought the effort last time out, the runner-up performance behind Big Vince, this horse was gobbling up ground in those final stages just to miss. And in terms of how Turfway Park has played this gelding, pretty well from those 2 efforts, was able to break the maiden there decisively. And I think it brings up a great point in here about the pace. I think the pace is going to be honest enough where a horse like him is not going to be compromised. We know he's going to be able to save ground with the inside draw. I don't think that hurts him in here. And just looking forward to seeing if he opts for this spot. He is cross under another spot at Oaklawn Park. And then going back to Kale's Angel, The races on the dirt are very good, but it's the
Yep.
dirt at Oaklawn, and kind of looking at this horse being third to Coal Battle, probably one of my top 5 Derby horses right now. That's all great, that's all dandy, but that's dirt. It's the turf races where I think they are good, but they are not as strong as the dirt races. So I'm just wondering where this horse is going to kind of convert here onto the synthetic, how he's going to handle it. I thought you brought up some great info here about the workouts. And sure, you know, in terms from a time perspective, the time looks good. But when you start to look at the works visually, that tells you a little bit more. And I have to use him. I think I'd be dumb not to. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I found the other two more intriguing.
Yes, this is a horse so I'm going to have just kind of a tough time figuring out what to do with because initially when we pull up my grid, I have him as a key because I do think his form overall, like you're pointing out, Cole Battle is one of the top horses right now on the Derby Trail, and I love what Kale's Angel has done. Even the turf races, they're fine. Like you said, he's better on the dirt. I think he fits, but is he coming into this race 100% and in his best form? The horses who I think are really interesting and horses to use as well, coming in hot, who you mentioned, Big Vince. The problem with Big Vince, though, in this race, it does look like at least the presence of Killjoy is going to make life a lot more difficult for Big Vince than it was last time out. So I did think the 8, Global Steve, blinkers coming on, a horse who I'm just going to eliminate the withers and say that, you know, it just didn't fire really that day. You know, if you eliminate that race and you're playing him off of the Parks form, I think he actually fits from a class standpoint. Now, will he take to the track? Will he take to the surface? At least we'll get a price built in if you want to go a little deeper in this race and throw in kind of an interesting long shot. But the more you talked about Piquant, I was warming up to Piquant too. That was one of my on the edges horses. So a lot of the times you and David or Michael kind of talk me into using one other horse that was on the edges. So especially in races where I might have other keys, I'll probably throw the one in because there are definitely versions of this race where that horse gets some pace to run at, right? Saves ground and just comes rolling. And Big Vince has to deal with Killjoy early.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring up a great point too on the fact of maybe talking someone on a horse. I think that is fine. I think talking off is like the worst thing ever. If you have a gut
Completely agree.
opinion, you go with it. And you know, these are the races where you're trying to figure out your ticket structure and trying to craft. It's a very challenging sequence. We've talked about it. This card, I think to this point in this year in 2025, one of the best cards top to bottom with those 13 races. I mean, these are really full fields. They're kind of overflowing with runners. You'll see a lot of things change too. A great thing to point up as we move to races 10, 11, and 12. There's also eligibles. If horses scratch, there are going to be other horses that some of them aren't, you know, 30 or 50 to 1 shots. They're playable horses. So this can kind of, you know, maybe pause for thought and maybe have to restructure this weekend.
You made a really good point too, Ashley. When I'm watching videos like this and I'm listening to podcasts or other help, I will look for horses that I can add. I don't really change my overall strong opinion, but I'm looking for horses just like Piquant. Because if I'm playing a pick 4, pick 5, I'm spreading out. I'm looking for those 6, 8, 10 to 1 shots. Those are the horses where I go, oh, you know what? They weren't really on my radar, but someone that I respect kind of talked me into them a little bit, then I'm going to add them. I think that's the way to use these types of videos. And I will do that all the time. Even now, I have a massive ego for myself as a gambler, as a handicapper, but I'm still willing to use some that aren't on my radar from people just like Ashley. So we turn to the Kentucky Cup Classic. This one is the Twin Spires Kentucky Cup Classic, grade 3 event, mile and an eighth on the synthetic, Ashley. I did read a little bit of a preview that our friend Nicole Russo has. She does a great job previewing a lot of these races. So if you go to DRF.com, she'll help get you set up for a lot of these stakes races. It's funny because the connections of Encino, Brad Cox, and Godolphin, this is a nice horse who had good form at Turfway last year, came off of a layoff, won his first start at Fairgrounds, and then they put him in the Gulfstream Park Mile, and he showed a little bit of speed and didn't fire. And it was funny. They just said, yeah, we don't really know what happened. He just didn't fire, but we're going to come back to a place that he likes, and we're going to get him back to a synthetic track. It's always interesting when you just don't fire, and even the people closest to the horse are kind of scratching their head going, we were actually hoping he would run well and then go to Dubai off of that race. That was certainly not the case in that small field in the Gulfstream Park Mile. I think he's one of the real keys to this race, Ashley, because it doesn't seem like there's that much early speed in here.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with him. I think you bring up an interesting point in the fact that the connections are a little boggled by last time out. I don't know if I like that more or if I would rather hear we know what happened.
Exactly.
Right? Whatever it is. So
because I don't know what happened watching it.
Yeah. He just took a big step backwards. So That's not a selling point for me personally. So when I look at Kiyu's defend, I'll defend him. I find him scary, right? He's not going to be in my top picks just for the fact that I don't know what to do with last time out. And he's one of those horses that I put him in the defend category because if he wins by 3, I'm not shocked. If he's out of the money, I am also not shocked. So he's not a horse that I necessarily want to focus in on, but he would be in my defend category. And I think for me, the two that I want to focus in on is Paros, the 2 in here. Nice price, 8-1. I know those last 2 performances aren't great and sort of similar things. Chased a little bit, tried to close even pace. But the one effort that he had in the Prairie Bayou, I thought was a very good performance. They did go quick early on. He was able to close, get up. He beat a couple of the other horses that he'll face in here. But he's a horse that maybe he's a lost a step in those last 2, but I think Mike Maker can get him back on track. I find it very intriguing to see Juan Hernandez booked to ride. That to me is a green light factor. And you have to be willing to forgive his performances. In terms of figures, they're not like Encino at Gulfstream. We're not talking about a 61 last time out, right? That was the figure somewhere around there.
Yeah, exactly.
They're 80s. Okay, but that's why you're going to get 8-1 on Paros. So I like him. I have to have faith, though, that he can return to form. The other horse in here for me in terms of a key is Hush of a Storm. This is I guess, the other Brad Cox in the field. I think for that reason, he will take less respect. I thought in terms of trip, unlike the horse I just talked about, he could be closer. Last time out, he was at least closer to a pace that wasn't that quick. They almost went 48 to the half flat there, but he was just sort of mid-pack. The winner he'll face again, but the winner was 30-some to 1 in that spot, made it 2 in a row. I think this is a horse for a course, a horse that has done some of his best business down at Turfway Park. So I'll use him. And then for me, the use is Verstappen. I know this distance, Gino, is probably not his forte. When you watch the races at Turfway, you're seeing him go 1.25 miles, but looking at his recent form, I don't want to take anything away from him. They've been able to travel him in those last 3 starts, Fairgrounds, Sam Houston, Turfway Park. He's shown up every single time, depending what the fractions are. I think they're going to be quicker than he has seen in some of those efforts. So he's going to have to close from off of it. But this is a horse that, again, fun horse to watch and maybe more of a distance horse. But that's why I'll put him in that use category.
What you've done too with the horses you have throughout, you've basically got all the different types of like running styles and trips kind of mapped out, right? You've got, if Encino sneaks away, you've got the 6 in a defend. You've got a horse like Verstappen. If they go too fast and someone comes rolling from way out of it, it's probably Verstappen. You're pointing out how Hush of a Storm could kind of get the sneaky trip, right? Probably a good trip, not sitting too far out of it. And then you have Paros who can kind of be placed in different spots. So you sort of have a speed horse, a horse coming from way out of it, and then a couple that could be right in the middle there. So I love how you've kind of got horses that could be coming from all over the place there. And however the race shapes up, you'll probably have a horse who's in a good spot there. Let's take a look at the way that I'm putting the grid together. So I throw the wild card on top, and then I've got all of the kind of logical horses underneath. So I think you and I have all the same horses, just in different ways that we put them in our key use and defends. Pointed out Encino, kind of the Jekyll Hyde horse, right? You're going to get a horse who maybe gets clear and wins by 3 or is nowhere to be found. We'll probably know pretty early on if he's loose out front, if he looks comfortable, you're probably going to get a really good run for your money. If he's up front battling or if he's not on the lead, you're probably going to be moving into the used category for the horses that you're watching pretty quickly if you're playing some of my horses. But the 3, Verstappen, who you pointed out, I thought the 4, Mercante, when we're thinking about trips, if Encino goes to the lead and he's not 100% or he's not in his best form right now, if he stops, one of the first horses that could kind of take over might be Mercante at a very big price. He could be a horse that outruns his odds, at least like a fun under horse in tries. I'll also mention the 7, Tap It Shoes, who's a big fun price who could come running. Hush of a Storm, super logical. Then you want to go a little bit deeper because I have a couple keys. I wouldn't have any problem again with horses like the 2, Paros, who you pointed out, to the outside, the 10, Utah Beach, who's more of a turf horse, but I think class-wise fits pretty well with this group. And then Chiron to the outside. So I think in the deeper spots, a lot of ways to go. And we'll see what Encino does, because that's going to be a real key to this race, Ashley.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you brought up about trips in here, not to sound like a parent, but I highly recommend watching the first 5, 6 races this Saturday at Turfway before you punch your tickets. There was a while where there was just simply a speed bias, and I'm not necessarily one that uses that word often. You can watch a couple of race cards where if you weren't in the top two, it was very rare that a closer was being part of the mix. And then it was fair after that. You were seeing closers. So I think that'll help get a better feel for the track. Talk about the surface there. Weather really doesn't affect it, but it's still, I think, a little moisture does affect certainly how it plays. Doesn't necessarily downgrade the track, but just something to take note for this weekend.
Yeah, I remember at Del Mar, the same thing happens, right? It gets 15 or 20 degrees cooler when that synthetic surface was down there. It'll open up, it'll tighten up a little bit sometimes. And what's nice, as you were pointing out, you have 7 races before this pick 5 to get an opportunity to see what the track has been playing like. Sometimes it plays a little different in the day than it will in the evening, right? This is a track that runs a lot at night. And so sometimes it's a little colder there too. Just small things to point out, anything that you can help kind of give yourself another little tidbit for your handicapping, for your gambling. Let's move along. We go to the Kentucky Oaks points race. We've got the Bourbonette Oaks coming up next. Ashley, tricky field here. Now it does look like the number 5, Bless the Broken, will be running in this race. I think was cross-entered in a few spots this weekend. Will then looks like will be running in California, I believe. So just some notes on the Bourbonette Oaks, but very competitive group. Towards the outside, Ashley, you have the fast White Rocks, who has won back-to-back races, won the Cincinnati Trophy, which is kind of the stepping stone to this race, and has dealt with the number 3 Admit in a couple recent races. So they're rivals who feel like those two are kind of on the top tier, I think, in this group.
I think so. And I think the Cincinnati Trophy is the race to start with. Obviously, a lot of the key contenders exit that race. You can talk about the trip. You mentioned the fast White Rocks. I don't think that was necessarily Victor Carrasco's plan out of the gate to just go and open up a sizable advantage on the field. It just happened to be that way. Had a post, I think had post 4 in there, was able to get to the front, and she was motoring, but I don't think he was really asking her that hard, right? It wasn't like she really got jostled and hustled into that spot, and no one kept up with her. And I don't think he honestly asked her until, I don't know, halfway through the final turn to sort of kick on from the field. And she still wins by a length and a quarter. I think she's very intriguing in the fact that, look at her debut. She was able to close from off of it. Next time out, they went slow. I do think it was the plan there. No one wants the lead. I'll take the lead. But I don't think last time out in the Cincinnati Trophy, that was necessarily the plan. And I don't think that's going to happen again. I don't think we'll see a repeat of that trip come Saturday. With that said, a big fan of hers. I used her in the Cincinnati Trophy, but for me, she's going to be a use. You mentioned the other name, Admit. I think Admit for me is the horse to beat. I loved her performance last time out. I think she's been very good since switching over to the surface, and she has progressed with each and every start. I know from a speed figures perspective, she didn't, make a big step forward from 80. She dropped. She went to a 76, but I don't think they were going to catch White Rocks, and to see her get a mid-pack trip, close nicely, and still finish up, I think that is huge. So to me, she's the horse to beat. And then you mentioned Bless the Broken was cross-entered, and looking at the spot at the fairgrounds or here, I think this is an interesting spot. It's going to be a surface switch. They've opted to try something new with her. You look at the competition that she has faced. 3 back, she didn't fire at all in the Demoiselle. And we know Mahima, and Ballerina d'Oro, much the best in there. But that last time out on the Silver Bullet Day, prior to, in her following start, I should say, she ran a very game second to Simply Joking, who I know is on the radar of a lot for a trainer that's been doing very well with the fillies. And then Rachel Alexandra, well, we'll see how you assess it. It was a 4-horse field. I just think she was overmatched, especially with Good Cheer, who's going to be the heavy favorite down at the fairgrounds on Saturday. So like that she's going to switch surfaces, and she has some local works to get her prepped here. So I would figure based on what they've seen, they thought this was the better spot for her. And she's going to offer value. She's 10-1 on the morning line, and I don't think I would take much less than that, Gino, but for me, very intrigued by her.
Completely agree. She's in my key horses as well. That's the number 5, Bless the Broken, and the connections have said they will run here. I mean, if you just took those last 3 races, I think any of the 3 fillies that beat her would be heavily favored in this spot, right? Mahima, Simply Joking, Good Cheer, they would be really, really tough in here. We're going to see Good Cheer this weekend in the Fairground Oaks and see if she can stay undefeated. Bless the Broken's one in my keys. I also like a couple of the horses coming from Southern California that I think are interesting and could offer us really nice value, like the One Resolve, who can just sit a really nice trip, was inside last time out, got off the rail, just missed in between horses trying to run down a horse who was loose on the front end, a horse who's actually going to come back and run in the China Doll on Sunday this weekend. Amarita. So I thought the 1 and the 7 as Catch Can is kind of interesting because Jonathan Thomas had as Catch Can and Will Then. He's going to have Will Then stay in Southern California, where Will Then will be a major player in a short field in the China Doll. I actually think when you go through as Catch Can's form, it makes sense why they would give this one a shot, who has that synthetic form already, right? In a couple races up at Woodbine on the synthetic. I think she's really interesting in this spot. So to me, the 1 and the 7 were kind of my fun price horses. And heck, the 5's a very fair price too. Those are 3 horses who I'm definitely going to have in my pick 5. They're all going to be a little bit outside the box. I completely agree with you in that I think the 3 is the horse to beat. No doubt. I think Admit ran really, really well, chasing Lone Speed last time out. I'll use both Admit and White Rocks in that next tier. I mentioned we just found out that Will Then will probably be staying in Southern California, so I had thrown Will Then in before we got that information. And then also the 8 on their Golden Sunshine. Put it all together, kind of breaking the maiden last time out. I like horses like this, Ashley, with that light bulb angle, right? When they've been sort of knocking on the door, you've seen them flash talent in some of their prior starts, and then they get that big put it all together win where it kind of everything flashes for them. So I have 1, 5, and 7 and as my top tier. One thing, if you're going to maybe take out of this race, both Ashley and I think the 5 is a really interesting price horse to include. That could be in that like 8, 10 to 1-ish range. Those are the types of pick 4, pick 5 horses you're looking for. That one could be a horse that really spices up the exotics. Anything else you want to mention on the Bourbonette Oaks?
No, I mean, it's a great group of fillies. It's kind of tough, right? You've talked about Resolve a little bit. She was sort of fringe for me based on the fact that she was a game second to Super Speed, who we know was able to take her form and actually race pretty well on the dirt in her most recent start. And very curious to see how they will bet this race. You know, we talked about Admit 9-2. I don't know if we'll get 9-2, but there isn't one horse, in my opinion, that's an ultimate standout. There are a couple of fillies that I found really intriguing.
And then sometimes when you get the shippers, they take a little bit of money too, right? The horses from Southern California might take a tad. Even a horse like Breast the Broken wouldn't be shocked just coming off of those running lines, gets a little bit bet. And then the money's really all spread out. So always interesting when you have a track like this where horses are coming from all over, trying different surfaces too. That's the Bourbonette Oaks. Kentucky Oaks points are on the line. As we turn the page to race number 12, it's the main event. It's the Jeff Ruby Stakes, grade 3, mile and an eighth, and Kentucky Derby points up for grabs in this one, Ashley. The major players in here are the horses who ran really well in the John Battaglia Memorial last time out. You've got the 3 California Burrito, who went gate to wire on the front end in that race. He held off Baby Max. Both of them held off Maximum Promise, who had a slow start. I think all 3 of them could improve off of that effort and are super logical horses, you know, coming back. Then you have new faces like Calling Card, Innovator, Flying Mohawk. Poster won the Remsen and was one of the top horses in this group early on at 2. Kind of been like out of sight, out of mind. We've only seen him run once so far this year, and it was kind of a lackluster third in the Sam F. Davis. What are some of your overall thoughts and some of the horses who you want to use in this big Jeff Ruby Stakes?
Kind of looking at this format of key, use, defend, there are probably, honestly, maybe 5 horses that I would like to use. But I think about budget, think about my strong opinions, and that's where I had to get a little bit skinnier once again. So talking about California Burrito, 7-2 on the morning line, he will be a key for me. I know he doesn't offer necessarily value, but I think he's a must-use. He's not just a use, he's a must-use. So I put him in the key spot. I'll be honest, when I liked him in the John Battaglia, it was not based on his win prior to that. He walked. I mean, he went 26 to the opening quarter, 51-3. I know he visually looked good, but for me, that's not why I liked him. It was going back to the race down at Churchill, where he was second to Magnitude, who we know is off the Kentucky Derby trail. We know what he was able to do at the fairgrounds. I think that performance, to be second to him, made me intrigued. And then to see what he did last time out, they didn't necessarily go fast, but they certainly went faster than his prior win. And thought he got a great trip. I thought he looked good doing it, and he was game to the wire. Other horses were trying to get to him. Baby Max looked like he might get by. No, he did not get by. He could not. So I liked his gameness in the stretch, so he is a must-use and a key horse for me. But the key price is the 5 Flying Mohawk.
Nice.
You don't know what you're going to get. He's won his last 2 races. He was able to graduate. I like that he went to the shelf. They tried him somewhere else, and he won really nice down at the fairgrounds. Prior to that, I guess his one really bad performance, and I never like to say a debut was bad, so it'd be the Pilgrim, but really, was it that bad when you look at who he faced in there and that he was a pace setter? I don't think he wants to be a pace setter. I'm just very curious to see what Ramos will do here in terms of trip. I think he has some options. I would like to see a trip similar to what we saw at Churchill. I don't want to see him too far off of it. I want him to see him maybe 2-3 lengths off the pace. And he's 15-1 on the morning line, and kind of alluded to earlier was simply joking. Beckman, in terms of what he's been able to do with the Phillies, is very good. He's having a good year this year. And I know this is one of the Colts, but just kind of taking a little bit of notice of the name and the kind of the resume now that goes with him as a trainer. So he is the only other key that I have in here in terms of use, the 10 maximum promise. I thought he ran well in the Battaglia. Obviously, he was trying to catch Baby Max and California Burrito, but in terms of him, just his second start since August, I have to think he's going to take a step forward, third off the layoff. And I like that they're going to stick here based on what we saw. You look at his LeCompte performance, it was okay. He was trying to get up there. He almost got fourth in there, but I think he could take a step forward, and he's not a huge price, 5-1, but I'm kind of hopeful that he could float up from there just a little bit.
You and I have a couple real similar horses that we like in this race if we take a look at my key, because I like Flying Mohawk as well. I have Flying Mohawk as one of my kind of used horses, no doubt about it. My key to the whole race is Maximum Promise, because I think if from a betting standpoint, he could be a really fun horse to kind of set yourself up for a big performance. He doesn't have to be as far back as he was last time, Ashley. And then just kind of reading the tea leaves, I think they're going to try to get him involved in the race a little bit more. Not on the lead, but his win came at Ellis when he was right on the front end and he crushed. So we know he at least has that weapon in his arsenal if they want to use it. I'd love to see him just more forward from the outside, sitting a little bit closer, because he was the only horse in that race in the John Battaglia that was closing at all. Basically, the horses who were up front and forwardly placed, they kind of separated, and nobody else was picking up any pieces except for him. So I thought that was a really good performance from him. I have him as my key. And then because I have it set up with a couple different keys, I have a lot of horses in the second and third spots in some of these other races, because I can kind of mess around with 2 or 3 keys where I'm singling them, and then one race I can spread around a little bit. To me, a horse who I have to use in some way, shape, or form, Ashley, I've been kind of sucked in a few times with Calling Card. And they've scratched and they've rerouted him a couple times. Now, he had legitimate trouble that you do not see in the Gotham. He's the type of horse who I think only has like one big run, and you've got to build it up. So if he gets stopped, it's over. He's not going to start his run and re-rally. He's not real tactical and versatile. He started to move and then he got stopped, and he tried to come on again and he sort of got stopped again. I think there's a big race for him somewhere. I'm not sure where, but I want to be right the day that he shows up with a really big performance, and maybe it is on Saturday. So here's a look at how I've put that final race, the Jeff Ruby Stakes, and we can now move to Ashley's grid and take a look at overall. Ashley, like you said, you didn't want to go too deep in many of the races. You kind of have a little bit skinnier overall, but what it does is it makes it playable for people. You're going to kind of key on your stronger opinion. My grid will be a little different. I have a couple keys. I think I have 3 of them throughout, and then I'm deeper in some of the others. So I'm going to mix and match a little bit. Talk us through yours.
Yeah, I think kind of looking at this, probably the most interesting thing is my defend is Encino, which for a lot of people might be their key, might be their use. I'm not sold on last time out, and that's why this one goes to the defend category. I just can't really figure out what to do with him, but you can see for me, it's a really similar structure, typically 2 keys. I think looking at the races where maybe I'll go back and after scratches sort of assess are the Bourbonette Oaks and the John Battaglia. Poster scares me. I know you mentioned his performance last time out down at Tampa wasn't the greatest, but he was the only one moving on those top 2 at all, in my opinion, with sort of big strides. He was never going to catch them. It flatters him. Own Almighty came back to win next time out in the Tampa Bay Derby. But, it's going to be interesting if I can get past these first 2. I know you talked about it, the Rushaway. It might only be an 8-horse field here, but I'm hoping that End of Romance can get it done. The 2, I think, is a must use. And like I said, pretty straightforward from here. But yeah, my hot take is Encino.
Yeah, there's some similarities along the way that, you and I could probably hit this pick 5 with horses we like. In the first leg, race number 8, for me, I thought End of Romance very interesting. And then if you're looking for a fun price, maybe Megalodon. I threw the 5 in Cole Moon as a horse who really put it all together last time out. Those are my key horses. And then, good luck, because the 2, 3, and 4 all make a whole lot of sense there too. In the Animal Kingdom, that's going to be the tricky race. What do we do with Kale's Angel? I'll have at least 1 or 2 tickets where I'm probably single to Kale's Angel, who I think overall is the best horse, but will he take to the synthetic? Then another big question mark right after in the 10th, as you're pointing out, I think Encino will be one of the real key horses to the sequence for a lot of people. What are you going to do with him? Probably have one ticket where I'm with Encino and then another ticket where I'm a little bit deeper in that 10th race using some of the horses in the use and the defend category as well. Moving on to the 11th, that's the Bourbonette Oaks. That's where I think we could find some really fun prices. 1, 5, and 7, all kind of in that 8-1 ish, 10-1 range there with the Resolve, with Bless the Broken, and with the number 7 As Catch Can. And then I like Maximum Promise quite a bit in the Jeff Ruby Stakes, on top of a lot of other really intriguing runners who are fair prices underneath. One like Calling Card, Flying Mohawk, a couple that I think are going to run well. Heck, D. Wayne Lucas is going to be on the Derby Trail. Do we have another D. Wayne Lucas with Innovator? Don't be shocked if they try to get real aggressive with him. So however you're playing this pick 5 this weekend, we wish you the best of luck. Ashley had a grid for you. I have one for you, but it all comes down to your thoughts. And Ashley, the whole purpose of these videos is trying to help everyone out there just think about wagering strategy a little bit more, right? We do so many videos where we're handicapping the races, where we go through all the horses and why we like them to play. But now, how are we going to play them, or how are we going to kind of stack them up? This is equally as tricky a part of this game. That's what makes horse racing so hard, right? There's so many ways to lose. We just got to spend as much time as we can making sure we're prepared on a big Saturday like this one.
Yeah, handicapping and betting, very different things. You can be good at one and not as good at the other. So just sort of sharing our thoughts of horses that we are really intrigued by, horses that we're scared of, horses that we feel like we need to use, and then figuring out what to do on Saturday. It's a huge card. We talked about it, 13 races. And my only other advice is do your homework early. A lot of horses entered throughout the day.
And over at Fairgrounds, they have a huge day. It's Louisiana Derby Day. David Aragona and Marcus Hirsch did a pick 5 strategy video for Fairgrounds. If you're looking at that track and you want a little help with that one, what I love to do, I throw these videos on in the background while I'm doing my handicapping. It's great to kind of lead me into other horses that I may not have. So best of luck to all of you out there. Shout out to producer Bobby pulling the strings behind the scenes this week. And we wish you all the best of luck.